Hello everybody, welcome to Snyder's Inc. Today, we did another Mr. Ballen one. This one is The Pinchin' Man. Now, I don't know what this one is, so we're gonna find out. We're doing this really early in the morning, so the light's really bright. I apologize for that. Anyways, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Let's get into this. This is The Pinchin' Man.
What the police find in his storage locker makes this one of the most disturbing true stories on the internet. But before we get into today's story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right channel because that's all we do, and we upload 3, 4, even 5 times every week. So if that's of interest to you, please take the like button's email address and sign them up for the following 2 newsletters: the Bulgarian Michael Jackson fan club, as well as the German axolotl fish fan club. Also, please subscribe to this channel.
Why? What am I missing about those 2 magazines? What? I'm so confused.
And turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. All right, let's get into today's story.
He had plans for her. Oh god, what is this gonna be?
In 2014, a young woman named Jen was sitting in her sister's living room looking out their back window where her son and her 2 nephews were playing. And as she's watching them, one of her nephews, named Harrison, walked over to this tree and began peeling the bark off of the tree. And for Jen, this brought back a very strange childhood memory that she hadn't thought about in decades. And without meaning to actually say the words out loud, Jen kind of blurted out what was going through her head, which was, "So weird." And her mother, who was in the other room, heard her say that, and she yells into the room, "Hey Jen, is everything okay? What's so weird?" And Jen, feeling a little bit embarrassed that she just said that out loud and that her mom heard her, is quick to try to dismiss it by saying, "Oh no, sorry, it's nothing, I didn't mean to say that." But as she's trying to dismiss it, her mom had walked into the living room where Jen was and saw Jen was looking out the back window towards the boys. And so her mom walked right up next to Jen and goes, "What are the boys doing out there that's so weird? Are they doing something they shouldn't be doing?" And Jen's like, no, it has nothing to do with the kids. I just saw Harrison, who was doing something that reminded me of some weird thing that happened to me, and I blurted out my reaction to it, that's all. And Jen's mom looks at her and says, "Well, now you gotta tell me the memory, because I'm totally intrigued." Jen says, "Okay, Mom, I'll tell you the story. I don't know if Frankie's mom ever told you this or not, but when I was 8 years old, I spoke to Frankie and he was doing some homework and he told me to come meet him outside of his house and that when he was done, we could meet up and go play together." And so I walked over to his house and I was standing across the street in front of that small group of trees that we called the Pine Cone Forest, even though it was just a handful of trees, but we all called it that. Anyways.
Just a thing for, I have done that where I'm thinking something and it just blurts out. I have had that happen. It's really weird because then you have to try to deflect it because you don't want to talk about what you're doing, but it's really, like, it's almost impossible to do. I've had this situation happen.
I was standing over there and I was just kind of mindlessly peeling the bark off of the tree. I don't even remember consciously deciding to do it. And so as I'm peeling the bark off the tree, watching Frankie's house, waiting for him to come outside, I noticed to my right, there's this guy walking through the forest towards me. And I look at him and I've never seen him before. And before he got even within 10 feet of me, I could smell cigarettes. He reeked of cigarettes and his teeth were very yellow. He's missing.
Oh, the smell of cigarettes is something I know vividly. My family, everyone smokes in my goddamn house. Oh, that smell sucks. I hate it. Hate it.
A number of teeth, and I noticed right away when I looked at his hands, I don't know why I was looking at his hands, but I looked at his hands and he had these pointy yellow fingernails that almost looked like he was intentionally growing them out to be long and jagged. And he comes walking up to me and stops completely in my personal space. And instead of looking at me, he looks at the spot on the tree where I had been peeling the bark off. And he's literally like 1 foot away from me, so close that I had to lean back because I didn't want to be rude and run away. So I'm leaning back.
Oh no, don't care. If someone comes up in my personal space, you're either getting knocked out or getting taken, or I'm running away from you. Depends on the situation. Because I would have easily knocked that somebody back. Don't you? No. Listen, rudeness goes out the window once you're up in my personal space for no damn reason. Rudeness disappears.
to avoid being right next to this guy, and all I can smell is cigarette smoke. And he turns from the tree to me and he goes, "What do you think you're doing?" And I'm like this, and I'm like, "I'm waiting for my friend." And he says, "No, what are you doing to the tree?" And I remember looking at him and then the tree and saying, "Peeling the bark off?" And that's when he raised his hand up and pinched my arm with his nails, not with the pads of his fingers, but he was using his nails, and he's pinching down on my skin, and through gritted teeth, he says, "How would you like it if someone peeled your skin off?" I remember as he's pinching me, I was so terrified that I didn't do anything. I was like in a trance and just stood there looking at him, wondering what's about to happen. And then as luck would have it, Frankie's mom just happened to come outside and yelled, "Hey, come on inside, Frankie's done with his homework." And so that kind of broke me out of my trance. I pulled my arm away and I began running away from him across the street towards Frankie's house. And I turned around once, kind of expecting him to be chasing me, but he wasn't. He was still standing next to the tree that I had pulled the bark off of, except now he was watching me. And
what the hell? What a weird dude. Why is this dude so protective over the trees? They're so weird, it's so random. What the hell? I don't even know what to say to that. Like, that's such a weird thing for someone to do. I don't even know what to think of it.
I ran up onto the porch and ran inside, and that was that. I remember wanting to tell you about it when I got home, but for some reason I didn't. And then days turned into weeks, turned into months, and before long it was just a distant memory, and I never really thought about it, and at some point did forget about it, until just now when I saw Harrison peeling the bark off of the tree, and it brought it back, and that's why you heard me say, "So weird." That was my reaction to it, because I'm wondering, who was that guy and what happened to him? Like, that's so creepy. After Jen told her mother this story, she was expecting her mom to be a little bit horrified by it because it is a pretty startling story about her own child. But Jen's thinking it's been so long since this happened and nothing came of it that her mom would probably quickly move on from it. But Jen noticed her mom looked very concerned, and she turned to her and she goes, "Mom, this happened like 2 decades ago. Like, this is not a big deal." And her mom looks down for a second and then looks up, and she has this look of guilt on her face. And she says to her daughter, "Jen, I should have told you this when it happened, but you were so young, and I felt like it was going to ruin your childhood. And so I just didn't tell you, and it seemed like you forgot about it, but obviously you didn't, and so I guess you got to hear the full story now." Jen's confused at this point, and she...
There's more to the story? There's more to this guy? Does she know about this guy? What? What? What's more? What's going... Oh. Talk.
She says, "What are you talking about?" And her mother, who now looks really uncomfortable, she's touching her face, and she looks very anxious. She says to Jen, "It's time you learned who that man really was." Before Jen could ask any more questions, her mom just says, "Honey, just sit down and I will explain everything to you." So they sit down, and Jen's mom is still acting pretty uncomfortable. This is obviously a difficult subject for her. And she starts by saying, "Okay, so do you remember how in our neighborhood where you grew up, everybody seemed to know each other? It was a really tight community of people." And Jen's like, "Yeah, I remember that." And her mom was like, "Well, because of that, it made it really easy to spot people that were, outsiders, that didn't live in the neighborhood. And so if a car came down the street and I didn't recognize it, I would find myself looking out the window and watching the car to see where it was going, because there's no reason to be in this neighborhood unless you're a visitor or you live here. And so I was in the habit of people watching."
I can somewhat understand that. I can understand that type of thing where you're a people watcher, and I kind of do that just in my surroundings. I'm a people watcher, so I can understand that part completely.
Anybody that showed up that I didn't recognize, and I know a bunch of the other mothers in the neighborhood did the same thing, one of them being Frankie's mom. Anyways, on the same day that creep came up to you and pinched your arm when you were 8 years old in 1995, well, that morning, Frankie's mom, Sonia, she happened to look out her front window and she saw a vehicle she didn't recognize. And it was a work van, a white work van. It didn't have windows in the back, and it was parked across the street near the Pinecone Forest. And so she assumed it must be a work truck, and whoever had brought it here was, working on one of the houses in the neighborhood. But where it was parked, it was not close to any one particular house. And there was lots of places you could have parked on the street. So it seemed odd, if you're going to be doing work on a house, that you wouldn't just park in front of the house. Like, why would you park, inconveniently farther away in front of this random forest? And so that got her thinking that something's up with this van. But she didn't think it was bad. She just was trying to make sense of it. And so all morning she found herself going to the window and looking out to see if someone was going to claim this van, but she never saw anybody go near it. She didn't see workers going in and out of it. She didn't see any activity that was related to the van. It was just this empty van parked randomly across the street. And by the afternoon, when still no one had claimed this vehicle, she was getting ready to call the police. So that same day, you and Frankie had spoken on the phone and planned to meet up at the Pinecone Forest after he was done with his homework. And he didn't tell his mom about these plans, and so she didn't know that you would be very close to this van. Had she have known that, she would have told you to not wait out there, but instead to come right inside and don't go near this van. So at some point in the afternoon, when Sonia's getting ready to call the police, and you were actually already over at the Pinecone Forest waiting for Frankie, Sonia's looking out the window and she sees the back two doors fly open, and that guy who pinched you jumps out of the back and starts running into the Pinecone Forest. And from where Sonia's looking, she can only see part of the forest. The other portion of it is to the right, that's out of her view through this window. And so she turns and runs in her house to the side window of her house, and she looks out at that section of the Pinecone Forest where this guy has run to, and she sees you standing in front of the tree, and she sees this guy sprint right up to you and sees him pinch you in the arm, and he's talking to you, and that's when she ran out onto the porch and yelled for you to come inside.
What? So this woman noticed this dude once the girl was sitting in the forest, the dude's back windows, back of the van opened up, the dude run into the forest and went to go pinch her and most likely attempt to grab this woman? What? That's insane. I don't know what to say to that. My brain is shocked by that. Holy shit.
And she would tell me later that when she did that, she tried to sound very natural. She was worried if she sounded like this was an emergency, not only would it frighten you, but it might trigger this stranger to grab you or take you, because now he's been made. Someone realizes he's a bad guy and he might take you. And so the whole time she's watching you, she was watching him to see if he was going to chase you. And so when you came inside, she did her best to be totally calm and told you to go play with Frankie. And as soon as you were out of the room, she ran around the house and locked all the doors, all the windows, and then called me. And we decided it made sense to call the police. Even though you were safely in the house, we didn't know who this guy was, and it seemed like he was intentionally targeting you, like he was waiting for you the whole time. And so Sonia calls the police, and a police cruiser was sent over to our neighborhood, and they quickly found the white van that matched the description. They pull up next to it, and they walk to the driver's side, and sitting inside the car is a man that matches the description of what Sonia gave, and he's acting really weird. He looked like he was on drugs, or maybe he was drunk, or something was wrong with him. Something was off about him. And so the officers had him step out of the car, and they searched his car, and in the front two seats there was nothing but cigarette butts and trash, and there was a partition wall between the front two seats and the back workspace of the van. They went around to the back of the van, and they see this guy has screwed a latch onto the back of the two doors right across the middle, and there's a padlock through it. So there's an
Oh, so this guy is making sure that if anyone's in this thing, he ain't getting out. So she would have been put in his vent. She would not have been getting out until this guy was done with her. Oh, man. Why? That is a sick, twisted, wrong way in this world. That's messed the F up.
an additional lock on this back door. Clearly, he doesn't want anybody getting in the back of this thing. And so the police turn to this guy and they're like, we need to get in the back of your truck. Can you please open this? And at first he was, making excuses why he couldn't open it. But finally he relented and pulled out a special keychain he was carrying that had 2 distinct keys on it. And he used one of them to undo the padlock. He opened that up and then he swung open the doors and he backed up. And the police look inside and they can't believe what they're looking at. Inside of this van, all over every surface in the back, were pictures of you taped to the walls, to the ground, to the back. I mean, everywhere you looked, there was a picture of you. And
what? Hold on. So every part of this back area of this van had just had a picture of this girl on. Oh no, there's so much wrong with that. There was so much that is wrong with that. I don't like that at all. Oh, I don't like that at all. I don't like that at all. That's messed up, bro. Why can someone have that type of personality and that type of non-moral compass, non-moral care to just do this to a random... What the fuck, man?
They weren't just recent pictures of you. There was at least a couple pictures of you when you were 6 years old, and you were 8 when he approached you. So we know he was following you for at least 2 years. Also in the back of the van were binoculars as well as a camera that presumably he was using to take these pictures of you. But that's not even the worst part. After this guy got arrested, one of the officers pulled out that keychain that had the key to the padlock on the back of his van, and he noticed the other key on the keychain was not just a duplicate key to the same padlock. It was a different, unique key. And so the police go over to this guy and they show him the key and they say, "What is this to?" And he says, "It's to my storage locker." And so the police track down a storage locker and they go over there and they unlock the lock with the key. And they open the door, and what's inside is straight out of a nightmare. The entire storage locker, the ceiling, the floor, the walls, all of it was covered in clear plastic wrap. And behind the plastic wrap, you could see on the walls were hundreds more pictures of you. And in the middle of the storage locker was a dentist chair that had been anchored to the ground. Next to the dentist chair was this silver tray like you would see in a dentist's office, except on it were all these knives. And they were not surgical or medical knives. They were like meat cleavers and hunting knives, crude instruments. And then next to that on a table was an anatomy book where he had used printouts of you to bookmark different parts of the book that he was taking notes on and highlighting.
What the fuck? So he was gonna, like, what? Do some freaking weird shit with this girl's body? This guy's fucked up. This guy is fucked up and is sickening and is so much wrong with this man. I have never... I hate this dude and I don't even know who he is. I hate him though. Hate him.
All of which had to do with the female anatomy. In the back of the locker was a rotted mattress that was just sitting on the ground, and anchored in the back on the wall were chains with handcuffs extending off of them, and then next to the bed were dozens of empty 5-gallon drums. When the police showed us pictures of the inside of his van, we were very shaken up. It was just so awful to imagine someone taking advantage of you in that way, you know, watching you. But when they showed us pictures of the chamber that he had created inside of his storage locker, that's just something I'll never get over. He clearly had plans for you. After hearing this story from her mother, Jen is a mixture of angry with her mom for not telling her sooner, but also sad, you know, that her mom had to go through that with her child because now Jen is a mother, and she can only imagine how horrible that must have been for her then and even still now. And so all Jen could think to do was give her mom a hug. After they embraced, Jen asked her mom, you know, what happened to this guy? You know, where is he? Did he go to jail? And her mom told her that he had confessed to stalking Jen, and he confessed that everything they found in the storage locker in his van was his, and that he understood the implications, but he never gave his real motives for it or really what his intentions were. He was ultimately put into a high security mental institution for the criminally insane, and her mom said she has no idea if he's still alive or if he's been transferred, but that was the last she knew about him. And so Jen wound up doing some homework and figured out where he was being held, and she asked to have a meeting with him because she wanted to ask him to his face, what were you planning to do to me? I want to know why you did this. And he agreed to take this meeting, but the day before they were supposed to have it, he took his own life. And so Jen doesn't know if that was brought on by their impending meeting. It certainly seems likely, but unfortunately, that's it. She doesn't get any more answers, and it will end with a big question mark of what was he going to do to me and why? So that's going to do it, guys.
This guy doesn't want her to know. what he was going to do and why he was going to do it. And that's kind of more insane to think about, the fact that she doesn't know, and she'll never know now, what the plan was. Wow. Everybody, thank you all for watching this. Hope you all enjoyed it. Hit the like button, hit subscribe button, comment what you think down below. Thank you all for watching. I will see you all for the next one.